Fosse, the Roman road. We've rejoined it and we're heading north. We're going to the Roman settlement, Easton Grey, called White Walls. On the old 19th century OS maps, they put it down as Mutandis, the Roman settlement in Mutandis. This might be, there was quite a fraud conducted in antiquarian times where loads of Roman names were given to places that were made up by a fraudster from Holland. But so it might be one of those, but anyway, the remains, well, the site is here. Rain might be stopping play. I found a relatively dry spot underneath a hazel stool, coppice shrub tree, and I'm in the Roman town of White Walls. That's English, obviously, and it straddles both. It straddles the Fosse, the road, and it goes either side of the River Avon, the Schurston Avon, which locally is the real Avon. And I wanted to put the drone up to let you see the site, but I'll lose another one in a crashing ball of whirring disaster, and in this rain. But there's not much to see. It's an undulating ground now, but it has significance. It's on a very beautiful bend in the river, and it's on a significant part of the Fosse. And they found a plaque here with Cucallati on, and they're one of my great interests, the Cucallati. A lot of people who are interested in ancient religions and paganism and so on get hung up on, what they learnt at school, about Zeus and all the rest. But much like we might, if we're that way inclined, look for the intercession of saints, the Romans looked for the intercession of minor gods, and you had the mothers, which weren't minor, everybody venerated them. But you also have the Cucallati, which are very often, there's loads of plaques of this in the Gloucestershire area. I know we're in Wiltshire, but we're very close to the border, and they are three men in duffel coats that are very often facing one woman who often has some bread and fruit and stuff, very fruitful, a woman that feeds. And these men they are facing her, and they are wearing duffel coats, very often armed with a short sword. But they're not wearing armour, so they are attendants, and they're very often shown in comical ways on the continent and so on. And there's quite an abstracted sort of comic illustration of Cucallati in Cirencester Museum. This one's in the Cirencester Museum as well, and they have a whole collection of Cucallati, and they're just very, very interesting. They are a piece of pagan religion that the whole duffel coat thing might be a reflection of Celtic, that is British and Gaulish costume, maybe a reflection of those customs. So I've got a few bits of footage of various mothers and their attendants, and it's they are enigmatic, and I find them beautiful and interesting. Anyway, there's one found here. Anyway, the rain seems to be dying down now. I'll give it another go. start from Totley. Totley should interest you budding field antiquarians. The probably means lookout, to toot, the lookout place. I tried my very best in classic antiquarian style to shoehorn it into this Roman site, but it clearly doesn't. It goes to Hula, to Totley, it goes around a bit, to Totley, along the river, then it comes to Strete Ford, and that's where, in typical Anglo-Saxon style, with an Anglo-Saxon charter, you're something like 50%, 30% chance of it mentioning something Roman it passes through. You get plenty of Streets, but you would have thought it would have mentioned a major site like this, but it doesn't. It just wasn't of interest to them. It's just a load of old ruins, not even romantic ruins. It's just junk. Well, that's my theory. Now the actual charter, like the other two I've done in this area, is written in Latin with English bounds. So they were making these records for an educated elite, but with enough evidence to persuade the illiterate masses that this land belonged to them by using English terms. Now, so when coming to the Fosse, when coming to the Fosse, it calls it a stratum fossatum. No, stratum publicum, something like that. I'm not a Latin speaker. Now, what it means is public street, and that's interesting in itself. It doesn't call it the stratum publicum. It then goes on to say, formerly in antiquity, it was called the Stretta, which is Old English for street, a Roman road. And then it says, and now is called the Fosse, which tells us that the time when this charter was written, it had recently changed its name to the Fosse. So we can see it goes back to, I don't know what the date is. I'll put it in here if I can work it out. But it could be as early as the 11th century or even 10th. We called this road the Fosse.